Hello and welcome to StudyIQ. Today we are going to talk about a very interesting topic. I'm quite sure that everybody has this particular question in mind. For sure, I had that thing in my mind also. Very swiftly, very quickly, the Taliban gained control over entire Afghanistan. So the question is how Kabul fell so fast. I hope you remember that just before the fall of Kabul fell on 15th August. We were celebrating Independence Day, and that day evening, the Talibani fighters, they encircled Kabul. Now, before that, just a week before that, 5 or 6 days before that, the United States intelligence report came up which said that Kabul might fall in 90 days. But what happened? Within 6 days, Kabul fell. So the question in front of us was, why exactly Kabul fell? What happened here? Because if you look at United States, 20 years of effort, billions of dollars being spent here, a huge amount, a lot of sacrifice of the soldiers. For what? For this, that within 6 days, Kabul falls or the entire country falls to Taliban. So let's try to get the answer to this particular question. Let's analyze what happened in Afghanistan and let's try to understand the Taliban advance. What were the factors behind that advance? To get all this information, stay tuned with me on StudyIQ. I am your friend Rahul Saigaonkar. If you want to follow me, you can follow on this particular ID. If you have any queries, any doubts, you can directly message me on Instagram. I do reply on Saturdays and Sundays. And if you're preparing for any competitive exam, UPSC Civil Services or any other state PSC, here's a list of state PSC examinations that we run. Just go to studyiq.com or download the app from Google Play Store to know more about us. Right, let's talk about the news. This is the ritual that we follow, the news. We all know this, right? At the gates, Taliban are ready to take the Afghan capital, August 15th news. Right, I told you, we were celebrating Independence Day, and on that evening, Afghani capital was being capitulated. Talibanis encircled it and eventually they took control of Kabul. But the question is, why did it happen so swiftly? What were the reasons behind it? The first question is, did it happen in one day? The answer would be no. I'll tell you the beginning of this particular decline, and the beginning was 29th February 2020. I'd say from March 1st, the Doha agreement, it came into action. Doha agreement was signed between Donald Trump, that is US administration, and Taliban. The US envoy, Zalmay Khalilzad, he was the broker to this particular deal. And please remember that the Afghan government was not a party to this particular deal. You see, US Taliban sign a peace deal, American troops to leave in 14 months. So the due date was May, right? May 2021 was the deadline when the US withdrawal was going to happen. Now, if you look at this particular map, and I want you to observe this map in 2020, how much area did Taliban control? A few areas in south, some areas in the middle, and some areas in the north, right? Some areas, mainly countryside areas. Now, if you look at this particular development, why I'm showing this is, if you see the map of this particular May, it's very similar, right? May 5, 2021. If you see the Taliban controlled regions, they are quite similar, a little more than that, whatever we saw, right? Even little less than that also, because when Donald Trump announced, the Talibani forces, first of all, they felt a sense of victory. That is for true, right? But they did not go for complete offensive. They were playing a game of wait and watch. They came to table to discuss because under the Doha agreement, it was suggested that there would be intra-Afghan talks. And what were these intra-Afghan talks? Between Taliban and between the Afghan national government, which was led by Ashraf Ghani. But the intra-Afghan talks, they went nowhere. There was no progress in the intra-Afghan talks. In the meanwhile, the Taliban continued their offensive. They were playing a game of wait and watch. Why? Because they knew there is presidency elections in United States. And in January, we came to know that Donald Trump would no longer be the president of USA. The new president, Joe Biden, he started his presidency. And all eyes were on Joe Biden now. Everybody thought that Joe Biden, the liberal leader, he would go with a more nuanced approach with respect to Afghanistan. But Joe Biden, he respected the deal. The only thing that happened was the deadline shifted from May to 9/11/2021. Now, as soon as the US withdrawal started, you can see from May 5, 2021 to August 14, the Taliban controlled most of the area. And on August 15, they captured Kabul also. Within just a couple of months, I would say that the entire country was ravaged by Talibanis. Now, if you see here, when the US withdrawal starts. May 1st, the US withdrawal slowly and steadily started. By August 15 or by August 10th, almost 95% of withdrawal was over. And if you see the Taliban controlled district, they have been growing continuously since May. So one of the factors here is the Doha agreement for sure, because Doha agreement, it gave a sense of victory for Talibanis. And once Joe Biden accepted that US will withdraw very soon, then Taliban started their offensive. The next factor was local politics, and I would call it Biden-Ghani factor. Why it happened so swiftly? It is because of these two people. Now let's first talk about Joe Biden. I told you Joe Biden started his presidency in January 2021. Now everybody was looking at him. What would be his approach toward Afghanistan? He kept a lot of people guessing initially, but later on he did say that we are going to withdraw by September 2021. Again, there was nothing new in it. Please remember, Biden's Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, he somehow, I'd say, he foresaw the changes, or he foresaw what was going to happen in future. Why? Because in March 2021, Anthony Blinken wrote a letter to Ashraf Ghani suggesting that once the peace plan of USA will be implemented, then Taliban may advance. So he did warn Ashraf Ghani over that, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. But Biden also played a big role in terms of this swift victory of Taliban. Why? Because the way US troops withdrew without even announcing, in many of the cases, there are a lot of examples where the United States troops have just withdrew. They have not even informed their counterparts, basically the Afghan forces, Afghan troops. They did not even inform. We'll talk about one of such instances in some time. So the way US withdrew from here, it was utter humiliation. Now, from my personal point of view, normally I refrain from giving my personal analysis here, but what I feel here is that US has some sort of an end game. Now, why they're allowing Taliban, swift Taliban occupation is mainly because they might want to use Taliban as a counter to China, probably, because that is what will explain this particular thing. Because utter humiliation, as I told you, billions of dollars, a lot of time, 20 years of time, a lot of sacrifices by their soldiers. For what? For utter wastage of all those resources in just a couple of months, Taliban taking over. So that is why I feel US has some sort of an end game here, where they feel Taliban may be beneficial for them ultimately in the long run against China, against Russia. Because such tactics have been used by US before also. We know the example of the promotion of Mujahideen against USSR. So that is what explains to some extent. But nonetheless, these are all conjectures. Now, why Biden was responsible? For the way US withdrew, obviously. But why Ashraf Ghani was a factor? Ashraf Ghani and his political policies were a big factor for swift victory of Taliban. Why? First mistake that Ashraf Ghani did was he relied too much on Joe Biden. He thought a Democrat president, he would not allow Afghanistan to be ravaged by Taliban. It was his mistake. But on the second pointer, what we are going to discuss here is his internal political policies. Joe Biden himself, in a press conference, he told that Afghanistan has rampant corruption right from the topmost level, right from the presidential level to the lowermost level. That means we have been pumping in money in Afghanistan, we have been giving arms and ammunition, but there is a lot of corruption in Afghan administration. That was highlighted by Joe Biden. And Ashraf Ghani's policies were also criticized to a large extent, because see, Ashraf Ghani himself was a Pashtun. So he said that I am a true Pashtun president of Afghanistan. And the leaders from Northern Alliance who were made a part of administration in the early 2000 and later on in Ghani administration also, like Abdullah, Amrullah Saleh, Marshal Dostum, all these people were sidelined. We all know two presidential elections, 2014, 2019, fiercely contested between Abdullah and Ashraf Ghani, right? So there was already some sort of animosity between these two. And the way Ashraf Ghani treated northern warlords, there is a classic example of Ata Muhammad Noor, right? There was a constant tussle between Ata Muhammad Noor and Ashraf Ghani. Because of his policies, because of the corruption, the way he went for some sort of regional favoritism, he did break the Northern Alliance unity. And that is why we did not see Northern Alliance fighters fighting Taliban. One of the fort, I would say, Mazar-e Sharif is typically anti-Taliban because it comes in northern side. That was also captured very soon. So what we saw some ill-advised policies, some erratic decisions which eventually led to swift Taliban victory. But the most important factor, or the trigger, I would say, is the way Taliban captured city after city. I'll just give you two examples. Just try to understand the psyche of the Afghan forces here. The first incident took place on July 1, fall of Bagram. What happened in Bagram? In Bagram airfield was left unprotected. The US soldiers, the US contractors, US support staff, they left Bagram in the dead of the night on July 1st without even informing Afghan ground forces that they are leaving. That was the incident which basically broke the confidence of Afghan forces. See, the Afghan ground forces, they were left blindsided. They did not have any US air support. They did not have any US intelligence. So without any sort of communication, immediately Bagram was lost. And the way US withdrew from here, it put an impact on Afghan commanders and Afghan troops, that US are simply abandoning us without giving any sort of protection. And because of this, at many places, the Afghan National Army soldiers, they did not even fight. So what began in Bagram, it culminated in Zaranj. Very soon on August 6, Zaranj fell. Now what happened in Zaranj was very, very interesting. In Zaranj, when Taliban came, the government troops, the Afghan National Army soldiers, they allowed Taliban to walk. They basically surrendered with their equipment because they had two options. One, you surrender or you'll be killed. Now, in fact, when the soldiers surrender, it is said that many news reports have highlighted this, that Taliban gave pocket money to the surrendered soldiers. But those who resisted, they were killed. So try to understand the psyche of Afghan army here. Afghan troops, Afghan soldiers, they had two options. One, surrender to Taliban or fight for the government, fight for the people who themselves are not loyal to the country. So Afghan troops, they were lacking reinforcements, they were lacking US supports, and they were to fight for a government which was not getting its act right. So what eventually happened? Surrender after surrender. So after fall of Zaranj, you've seen fall of Faizabad, fall of Jalalabad, fall of Herat, fall of Mazar-e-Sharif, fall of Ghazni. And in fact, a very interesting story comes from Ghazni also. When Taliban captured Ghazni, the governor of Ghazni, he welcomed the Talibani fighters. He gave the keys of government offices along with flowers to Taliban fighters. Now that is what happened. And because of this, city after city fell like pack of cards. And within a fortnight itself, entire Afghanistan was captured. And this is what happened. Taliban enter the capital, US diplomats evacuate by chopper. You can see the news here, August 15, 3:23 p.m. So by August 15 end, entire Afghanistan was captured by Taliban. That is what happened. What began in 2020, I would say in March 2020, that ended in August 2021 with a swift victory of Taliban. Only time will tell how things unfold in Afghanistan, but that is how Kabul fell in such a short time. That is it from my side. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind.